What is up everyone, I hope you're all good. I'm Fish Shop Matt and today I am partnering with BRS Fresh to bring you the things you need to know about Neocaridina shrimp. Probably most commonly known in the hobby as the cherry shrimp, there are far more colours than just red available now, but these little shrimp do have a few requirements and a few things you've got to bear in mind before you buy them. To give you a bit of background behind these shrimps, they originally come from bodies of water over in Southeast Asia. Small streams and ponds, things like that. Now these bodies of water generally are very well furnished with rocks, wood, plants, and all of these places are giving the shrimp somewhere to graze on and feed on and hide in, and that's what they need in the aquarium. So with their natural habitat in mind, scaping the tank is really easy. Natural products like rocks, woods and plants are all going to be the main focus of the aquarium. This will provide these little shrimps with loads of spaces to hide and to graze, and hopefully for babies to grow up too. With these shrimps, the more surface areas you can give them, the better. It's going to give more areas for biofilms and algae to grow, and that's going to provide a natural food source for them, allowing them to thrive in your aquarium. Talking about plants in the aquarium, you may wish to soak these before putting them in. A lot of the plants in the aquarium industry come from open-topped farms where they may have to use pesticides and insecticides to make sure the plants are clean. So soaking them in a bucket of water for maybe a few days or a week or so and doing some regular water changes will mean that the plants are definitely safe to go in with your shrimp. Now I've never suffered that with the plants and shrimp, it's never been a problem for me, but it certainly is something I have read about online and in forums and things like that. One way to avoid this is actually using in vitro plants. Now these plants are actually grown in a gel solution, so there's no pests, no insects, no bugs, no snails, no pesticides, no nothing. So you know they're going to be safe for your shrimp. Now that we've talked about the scape, we really need to talk about water quality and water chemistry. Now these shrimp are fairly hardy, but a small amount of pollutants or toxins in the water can cause problems with them and can be fatal to your shrimp. They will generally live in a broad range of pH and hardness levels, but I do find them to do best in a medium to hard water, pHs of about 6.5 up to about 8. As long as you're avoiding the extremes of pHs over 8 and pHs under 6.5, they tend to do absolutely fine. It's not to say that they won't live in it, but they certainly won't do as well in it. One piece of equipment that I always recommend for shrimp keepers, especially if you're looking at doing it properly, is a testing kit. This will mean that you can keep an eye on all the parameters all the time and make sure everything is perfect for your little shrimp. Most of the time, keeping a fish tank, or I suppose a shrimp tank in this case, is actually about keeping the water quality rather than the animals themselves. Get the water right and everything else is easy. Now, as I've already touched upon shrimps feeding off of the biofilm in the aquarium, feeding is probably the next thing to talk about. Now, as I've said, they will just feed off of the algae and the biofilms around your aquarium. And in a mature aquarium, that's going to be perfectly fine for them. But if you're looking at breeding them and you're looking at getting the biggest amount of babies to survive and for your shrimps to be the healthiest they can be, a prepared shrimp food is probably going to be the best way to go. Now these generally come in different forms: pellets, sticks, tablets, all sorts of different things. The good thing with prepared shrimp diets is they've generally got a lot more nutrients and minerals in them like shrimp would need. Things like calcium are generally quite high up the list in shrimp foods. Now the good thing with these is that they will help the shrimp shed, they'll help it molt, they'll help it harden its new shell, they just help it do everything that a shrimp should do. So it is well worth using these foods. The other things that you can feed them is things like cucumber and courgette. It just gives a bit of variety to their diet. I wouldn't be feeding it every day, all day, but maybe once a week as a treat is a perfect little thing for these shrimps. Temperature wise, these shrimp are fairly tolerant. Generally aim between 20 and 26 degrees Celsius, which will be like, what, 70 to 79 Fahrenheit? Yeah, that's about right, 70 to 79 Fahrenheit. That's a good mid-ground for them. I have seen them kept way, way cooler, and I have seen them kept way, way warmer. The things to bear in mind is that the warmer you keep them, the shorter their lifespan will be, because just every process that they're doing is going to be faster. They are just going to have a shorter lifespan. And the same with them being in cooler water is everything will be slowed down, so they may not breed as much, their functions just won't be as quick. So it's one thing to bear in mind, but aim for that mid-ground, you should be absolutely fine. So what else can they be kept with? Well, firstly, more Neocaridina shrimp. The more, the merrier. The bigger the group you've got, the more often you are going to see them and the more confident they are going to be. One thing to bear in mind when keeping loads of these shrimp together though, is if you start to mix the colours, you may find that they start reverting back to their more natural browns and grey coloration. Now I don't worry too much about that myself, I'm not overly bothered, whatever colours come out, come out. But if you are wanting to keep the colours true and you're wanting the brightest, reds, blues, yellows, whatever colour you want, just stick to one coloration in one tank. Now when it comes to fish, you have to be careful. Unfortunately, if a fish can fit a baby shrimp or even a shrimp in its mouth, it's going to. These little shrimp are bottom of the food chain. Most of your nano fish, things like the little chili rasboras behind me in here, are perfect additions. They've got really small mouths and they're generally not aggressive. That being said, if there's a baby shrimp that's small enough, they will probably go for it, unfortunately. The other thing that you can have a look at is things like Pygmy Corydoras and Otocinclus. Both of those are generally really good catfish to house in with neo shrimps. But again, if they're small babies, if they get the opportunity, you might see the babies disappearing. So if you're wanting more babies and you're wanting to build a big colony of them, I would probably ignore all fish and just go for a shrimp-only tank. Breeding Neocaridina shrimp isn't that tricky, to be honest. As long as you hit the mid-ground of all the things we've spoken about so far, your pHs, your hardness, your temperature, they will breed on their own. Several of my tanks, I just let the shrimp get on with it and I'll get babies coming through. It's really not that difficult. Signs that your shrimp are breeding or getting ready to breed is that they will have reached maturity. So the females will be a lot stockier and a lot bigger than the males. Males are generally quite slim, whereas the females are a lot more plump because they carry more eggs. The other thing that you'll see is what people call the saddle, and that is a spot just behind their head on their back that will turn a different colour. Now it is harder to see in certain colour forms than others, but this different coloured patch is essentially the eggs forming inside the shrimp. Once the female gets past this stage, she'll start carrying eggs on her belly, so you'll see a load of little sort of egg-shaped things being carried by her legs. Once you're past that point, you're just waiting for them to hatch. Raising the young shrimp really isn't that tricky. As long as you've got nothing predating on them in the aquarium and you're providing them with enough surface areas around the aquarium for that biofilm and that algae to grow, again, you should get an amount of them surviving with very little issues. The more you do for these baby shrimps, the more you will get surviving. That's why I generally recommend feeding, because having that food source going in there constantly means there is going to be microscopic organisms and microscopic parts of that food floating around the aquarium for these shrimp to feed off of. Once they've grown up for a little bit, it really doesn't take the baby shrimp long to join the main pack of shrimp when it comes to feeding time. Chuck a tablet or a pellet in there and they will gang up on it and they will devour it. Once your shrimp get to this stage, they're past the point of no return. It's easy then. They will join the colony, they will start breeding, and hopefully you'll have that perpetual cycle of more baby shrimp coming through and you'll build an amazing group of shrimp in your aquarium. There are two last things I want to mention in this video, and that's two things that customers used to every now and again suffer an issue with. It's not a major problem, but it's definitely worth being aware of. Number one issue is being sucked into filtration. Well, I say sucked into filtration. Shrimp like exploring. I had my shrimp wandering up my little waterfall in one of my shrimp bowls, and they were constantly up and down the waterfall. Now, if that waterfall ended in a canister filter, they would probably climb in there and they would live happily in there for quite a bit of time. Now, I have seen people have colonies of cherry shrimps in external filters where they've got in there, they've started breeding in there, there's so much food source in there, they just live in the canister filters. It's not necessarily a problem, but obviously we want to see our shrimp. We don't want them to be hiding away. So it's well worth paying attention to things like the inlets on your filter, and if you're worried about it, just placing a little bit of foam over the edge of that filter to stop them getting in there. You could use an air-driven filter rather than something like an external or internal filter. That way you know there's nowhere that the shrimps can get to that's going to cause them any harm, or that they're not going to be seen. The good thing with an air-driven filter as well is that that sponge will build up loads of biofilm and loads of things that the shrimps will feed off of. So it's probably a better way to do it. I suppose you could run both, put a bit of foam over the inlet of a filter, run an air-driven filter for a food source and extra filtration. It's win-win then, isn't it? The second thing to watch out for is fish medicines. Now, if you are keeping your shrimps in with fish and you do have to unfortunately treat your fish for whatever reason, a lot of the treatments aren't safe for shrimp. So always read the label, check what you're doing. It might be easier to set up a quarantine tank, catch the fish out and move them and treat them away from the main colony of shrimp. But yeah, always check the label of any treatment or any chemical that you're going to be running through the aquarium for whatever reason, and make sure that it's shrimp safe. The companies generally let you know with a warning label on the front, but it should go without saying. Always read the label, always read the instructions. I think that's all the basics that you need to know. It definitely gives you all the information that you need to start your own shrimp tank and start keeping shrimp at home. I hope you found it useful. Massive thank you to BRS Fresh for having me on their channel, and I will see you in the next one.